Hi, I'm RakdosUnleashed, neurodivergent polyamorous gamer, and you are listening to Soulbind.
You're listening to Soulbind, a new podcast about the people who play the hybrid card game SolForge Fusion and their relationship with games. I love this game, and I'm curious to find out about what Carly loves about it too. So in the next 45 minutes, we'll explore how Carly and SolForge Fusion were first introduced, how this game has changed for her over time, and what her hopes and dreams are for the future of the world of Solus. Carly, thank you so much for joining me. It took us a little while to get this organized, but I'm so glad that we've made it happen. We've played a lot of games of SolForge Fusion together, a lot of intense battles, but we've never really had a chance to sit down face to face and have a chat. So thank you for coming on the pod.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
I'd love to know where it starts for you, and that doesn't have to be SolForge Fusion. We can go even further back. Where do you and games sort of start to intersect in your life?
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those. You meet them all the time in the gaming realm. I'm one of those lifetime gamers. I don't think I've ever not been a gamer. I have memories from childhood of being the only one in my family who really, really wanted to play board games all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had, if you're familiar with the Pop-O-Matic Trouble, with the little dice in the bubble that
you're bringing back a memory.
The real pieces around the board. Yeah, I had a travel version, and I would actually play all four colors myself against myself to see which color wins, because I couldn't get anyone else to play with me, and honestly I did not care. I was having fun.
That's awesome. I might see one of those board games that comes back to memory for me is, I think it was called the Omega Protocol or something like that. It was the first attempt to integrate an AI into a game. So it was a space station and robots, and he's trying to destroy you, and you only have so much time to move around. But I think it was the same for me. I remember playing it with anyone. I just remember being fascinated by it and trying to figure out how it worked and how to beat that game. Now this is great. You're taking me on a walk down memory lane as well. So what was the next evolution from those games? Did you find somebody to play with eventually, a family member or a friend, or did that take a while?
Definitely did a lot of solo gaming. I had told you I wanted to touch on neurodivergence in this podcast. So my first sort of hyper fixation as an autistic person was with playing cards. Very young, I played War and Spit and all of those childhood Go Fish, those kinds of games that people play. I think my grandmother taught me gin rummy at one point. I had a friend in middle school. We used to play a lot of 500 rummy. But I also do remember it was the summer that I think the second Backstreet Boys album came out. I had it on cassette.
Yep.
And I just sat on the floor of my bedroom for most of that summer, listening to that album on repeat and dealing out the solitaire game Free Cell that people play on computers.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that game on computers, and I actually sat on my floor with actual real physical playing cards and dealt out a game of Free Cell, and I had the time of my life. And it's one of those no one knew at the time that I was autistic, and it's one of those thinking back yeah, okay, I was very autistic. We just did not know what that was at the time.
Yeah, that's awesome that you can look back on all that with really positive memories. It was all about a positive experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. When did you start to pin down? Is it much later in life that we start to put these pieces together and look back on these memories and sort of start to label it neurodivergent?
So the label itself was a journey. I have a half brother. My parents split when I was young. My dad remarried, had two more kids, and his youngest, my half brother, got an official diagnosis of Asperger's, they called it. I hate that label for all of the historical references, so I don't use it anymore myself. But this was many years ago now. He was a child. He was under the age of 10. I think I was 24, 25 at the time. And he got that diagnosis, and my stepmom is just the most amazing human on the planet. I'm very blessed. And she's one of those mothers who is like, what is this thing with my child? I'm going to read every book on the topic. And the more she read, the more my dad realized, oh, this is me. And then he reached out to me and my older brother, hey guys, maybe do some reading because this might be you too.
Yeah.
surprise. We all have it.
That's awesome to have other people in your life as well. You're not alone in that experience, and you're all, I assume, slightly different in the way that it manifests for you.
Mhm.
Why do you think gaming intersects with this, or how does gaming intersect with neurodivergence? I'd love to sort of do a deep dive on that with you.
Yeah, no, that's a great little segue into it. That neurodivergent minds like solving puzzles, and games typically involve that kind of, and however the game is constructed, there's always that common, like, okay, we're trying to solve a puzzle here. So I think there's just that natural, oh, okay, this is a thing I like to do. I'm going to do it. And sorry, I just went slightly off track because I'm also learning this year I might also have ADHD, inattentive ADHD. So
That's okay.
my brain goes on tangents sometimes.
Anybody who's listened to my podcast knows that I don't put people under any pressure to stick with the present or the future or the past. They can jump as much as they like. So let's keep hopping around, and I'll either fix it with the magic of editing, or I'll leave it, and then that'll be an example of neurodivergence in practice, or ADHD or other things.
Right.
So I know that you play some other games besides SolForge Fusion. So could you pin yourself down to a type of game puzzle that particularly appeals to you and your personality?
So I think definitely card games, going back to just that first absolute obsession with playing cards in general. I have always been and will always be a board gamer as well. I possibly actually addicted to Diablo 2 in high school, so I do a little bit of video gaming too. But card games, I was 17 when I was first introduced to Magic the Gathering. I, freshman at college, was hanging out with my D&D buddies, and one of the others in the group, on the neurodivergent spectrum, most likely ADHD, he was playing Magic with the person next to him during the game because he just needed that for his brain to stay focused. He needed to stay busy. So they just sat there playing Magic quietly while everyone's playing D&D. And after watching them play, I knew, I was like, teach me that game. I want to do that.
Yeah, I'm in.
Just
all
never
in. Yeah.
Yep.
You brought back a memory from me as well of Diablo 2 that actually relates to relationships, where my first breakup, I was so busy playing Diablo 2, she was talking to me on the phone and she'd sort of mentioned we're breaking up. And I was like, what? I was so addicted down that tunnel of Diablo 2. So that's a nice little memory for me of relationships in Diablo 2. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So board games you love. We've been introduced to Magic. There's really something here. Where does it go to from there with the love of Magic? Do you go deep on that?
Yes. I played Magic for over 20 years. I think most people who've played Magic that long will have one or two little breaks, hiatuses that they've taken from the game. I also was one of those. I don't know how familiar you are with Magic. If you've played it, obviously you know what it is, but I don't know if you've played it yourself.
I dabbled.
But, okay. When they introduced the Planeswalker mechanic, It was 2008. And it also just kind of lined up in my life with, that's when I graduated college. And so I wasn't really hanging out with my Magic playing friends so regularly. So life happened a little bit too, but also I was one of those people who just didn't understand them, didn't like them, thought they changed the game too much, and kind of rage quit Magic for a couple of years. It did not last long. They got me back with a nostalgia set. A couple sets later, they were like, we're going back to this plane that was the first plane you ever played. Are you want to play again? And and from then it was just, I haven't taken another break since then until very recently, when I'm kind of on the fence about Magic now.
Well, and it's probably emblematic too. I believe your Discord handle is taken from Magic as well, right? A Magic player or character, Planeswalker.
I actually have a Rakdos tattoo right here as well. And yeah, I had a custom license plate right after college. I went to Rutgers, so the custom plate had a big block red R.
Nice.
And then I was able to pick 5 characters to go after it. So I picked AKDOS. So with the block R, it said Rakdos. And I still have that hanging on my wall. That's the color combination of black red, which, as you know, because we love the same things in SolForge.
We do.
Purple red is my jam, and purple red is Rakdos. So it's all full circle.
I just played in a sealed this morning, Eli sealed, and I looked at all my options and I go, oh, well, I guess we're doing purple red again because it's just the most fun thing to play for me and for you. Let's catch you up to SolForge Fusion now in your story. So what's the beginnings of you, walking away or taking a little break from your best friend Magic and sort of dabbling in this game? Was Flesh and Blood would have been first before you tried SolForge Fusion?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I still play Flesh and Blood as well. That is actually my partner's favorite game. I got to a point in my life a couple of months ago where I think I was up to 5 or 6 trading card games simultaneously, and that's just too many for even with an ADHD neurodivergent brain. That is too many to keep track of. So trying to pare them down. I can't quit Flesh and Blood because it's my partner's favorite and we play that together. So that one's staying. I wasn't going to quit SolForge because as we'll get to, I discovered it and fell in love. And then Magic has just been in my life for 20 years. So I dropped Lorcana. I can't even remember now. I had gotten into so many different...
That's how over them you are. I don't even remember their names anymore. Yeah, they're dead to me.
Yeah. That's true for most of my life. Don't even remember their names anymore. But Star Wars Unlimited, I actually am still dabbling in a little bit. Looking forward to the next set for that. So yeah, for a lot of my Magic playing friends, Flesh and Blood was their Magic killer. Mm-hmm. They found that game. It also has a lot of really interesting decision trees. Flesh and Blood is actually more complicated than Magic, which is a little bit shocking because Magic is known as being like the complicated TCG. But Flesh and Blood really is like the chess of TCGs. It is so... it's the kind of game that I cannot be competitive at. I play it for fun. I know I'm going to lose all day. I just, something about it and my brain don't quite click. It is very difficult to play. So I enjoy it. And for a lot of old Magic players, they found that and said, oh, this is perfect. This is what my brain needs. I don't need Magic anymore. So most of my Flesh and Blood friends are former Magic players who haven't touched Magic since. I am not good enough at Flesh and Blood to have left Magic behind like that because I am pretty good at Magic. So kept that around until SolForge. So I am lucky enough to have met Jurch at work. He was actually my assistant manager when I started my training, and through him learned that SolForge existed because I actually hadn't heard of it before him. We at one point had this little I was going to teach him Flesh and Blood if he was going to teach me SolForge Fusion. And at a game store, at the hours that it involves, both working at the same location, so obviously if I'm not working, he probably is, and vice versa, was difficult to get our schedules to actually line up. So it wasn't until he had been hanging out with Zoe and she got into the game and she had that Thanksgiving.
Yes, I was going to say this ties in with the oral history she gave of introducing you to the game, but it's always fun when two people's accounts match up, and so far 100% you're lining up with her story and yours. But yes, go on. So it was
well, it wasn't that long ago, so I'm hoping hopefully our memories are okay. But yeah, so she finally sat down and taught me, and just love at first 5 cards, I guess.
And I really liked a phrase that you used before, like it makes my brain feel good, or something to that, I think the way you're thinking about the game, and I'm starting to think of it as well in my terms, is like, what does it do for my brain? I guess dopamine triggers and all the puzzle solving. There is something just so appealing about the puzzle that is SolForge, of which of your 2 cards are you going to play each turn? What are you leveling? 2 different types of games that are existing simultaneously and sort of operating. What else is it about it, you think, because you play lots of different games, that makes it unique or interesting or makes your brain feel good?
Yeah, so it's a couple of different things that I think they just get perfectly right. And for anyone who does want more info of what I like about this game, I did leave a Steam review when the digital client first dropped, of all of these things too, that the elimination of the resource system, there's no mana. lots of games have tried different ways of, Hearthstone, you just get one extra every turn so that you get gradually more powerful things. Magic, you have your lands, and Lorcana and Star Wars, same, you play your card face down and it's like a land. Flesh and Blood, you pitch one card to pay for another card, so there's your decision making process. SolForge Fusion said, you know what, you each get to do two things, one thing at a time, have fun.
Yeah.
And I think they solved the puzzle of power creep with the levels. That at the beginning of the game, you can only play a level 1 creature. So no one's going to drop a game ending, level 3 Krogius on turn 1, cycle 1, because it's not possible. And that's how they got around not needing to resource gate the cards in your hand. So I love that about it, because it opens up the possibilities. And the lane-based combat is just, I had also gotten down the rabbit hole of Marvel Snap.
Me too.
Last December.
Yeah, recovering
no,
at
2
it.
years ago, December. Yep. Yeah, I haven't touched it in a very long time.
Same.
But the lane-based combat initially reminded me of playing Marvel Snap and trying to figure out, where do I put the different things. So I liked that puzzle of it. I liked that it limits you to just 5 creatures. You can't go wide like you can in a lot of other card games. That's just not a strategy here.
That was my distaste for Keyforge ultimately. Like, I was really big into Keyforge, but the number of times either I had an obscenely, like, battle line was 12 or 15 creatures and my opponent did, and I didn't have a way to deal with that, or they didn't have a way, and how that led to a game state that was kind of like boring, in that it was, well, it's done. There's nothing you can do, I love that limit of 5 lanes so much. And I hadn't experienced it before SolForge, so I'm glad you liked it too. Anything else that appealed about it, or does that about it cover the main things that you love?
Yeah, it is. It's mostly those things. I do enjoy the leveling cards. That sparks little nostalgia for me of cards like Dominion, which has been, I've been trying to sell this game to as many different groups of gamers as I can at my job, by being like, oh, you like board games like Dominion, try SolForge Fusion. Or, hey, you like Magic, have you ever played Jumpstart? There's always like some little tie-in to this game that I keep trying to introduce new people, because I really do think that if people just try this game, it just does get so many things right in the actual gameplay, that I'm hoping that more people will find it and love it like we do.
I've been trying to think what it is that separates this game from some of the other games for me, especially with regard to my own wins or losses and how I feel about that. And I do think there's something that appeals to a board gamer where you're building an engine, and you get the chance to build it by going on down your upgrade path and picking your bigger creatures and getting things. To me, I think in my brain, that makes me feel good, because win or loss, I was on a bit of a journey and I got to see my cards level up and grow, and I got to play some big ones, and I might not have won or lost, but I played a dragon, or I got to the big dragon, So I feel like that's something for me. I love to ask the question about what binds you to this game. So for a lot of people, that's been players in the community, and I'm guessing that might be the same for you. People like Zoe, or your frenemies like Church and Hellkite.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the community is wonderful. With Magic being my first competitive TCG, especially 20 years ago, Magic was a difficult space to be in, particularly as a female gamer. Very hard to play competitive Magic back then. It has gotten better, but there's still, the Magic community is just, I don't know if it's because the game's been around for as long as it has, that maybe it's just kind of that older mentality is still kind of stuck, but it's a different feeling with the Flesh and Blood community and with the SolForge Fusion community. They feel more welcoming. Different types of people represented. You can see the neurodivergence. You can see the like gender fluidity and queerness, and like everyone is welcome in these communities, and that's been really great. But I think ultimately for me, it is the game itself. It is just the gameplay is. To talk about being a Magic killer, since the digital client has dropped, I have not touched Magic Arena. and I was a daily grinder on that. So
yeah, I bought an Xbox earlier this year, and I don't think I've turned it on once since the digital client dropped because I'm just playing SolForge all the time. So kind of regretting that purchase, but also very happy to have found this game and these people. I was curious to know, like, what's your experience when you're at a convention as a neurodivergent gamer? So I wonder if you could talk about that for a little bit, or if you're interested in talking about that.
Definitely. And it's kind of good timing for that too, because the national championships for Flesh and Blood happened recently right here in the Twin Cities. So even though I did not qualify, because again, I am not actually good at that game, I did go with all of my friends and played all the side events. And so it is a struggle. I am the kind of neurodivergent where I have overstimulation issues, and it'll just kind of shut my entire brain down. So I have a goofy hat that I wear that has sort of flaps like blinders, like a horse, because I realize that we are all in a room together, sitting down for hours and hours. And for other people's mental health and sanity, they get fidgety. And I just happen to be a person where if I'm sitting across or next to someone who is fidgeting or, shaking their leg up and down or cracking their knuckles or, any kind, whatever fidget they need to do for their brain, if I can see it, it shuts down my brain. And I'm never going to tell someone not to fidget because they need to for themselves. Instead, I come up with ways to just shield myself from it. So I wear my goofy hat. And I also have started just kind of owning my situation, which it definitely is something I had wanted to touch on. The gaming community is so full of different types of people. And I think that there's a large percentage of people probably even listening to this podcast who are also on the autism spectrum. And the more open and vocal that I can be about it, to let people know that they're not alone and that there's nothing wrong with them and that it's okay, it feels like a safer space to be that open in a gaming setting, in a game store, at a convention. So I did it all weekend at the Flesh and Blood tournament, and I'm going to do it forever because it actually worked so well, where I would just straight up tell my opponent, hey, I am overstimulated right now. I am autistic. And half the people in the room who had heard me would start laughing and be like, me too, same. And they get it and they understand. And it's so much easier to just own it and say, if I'm being a little weird right now, this is why. My brain is a little bit having a hard time, and people get it. And it doesn't have to be as scary as you think it's going to be. People aren't going to laugh at you and call you names. And, it's really nice to be able to just be honest about it and let people know and have them understand.
There's definitely a power in, I guess, first off, knowing what your triggers are or how your brain works, and then learning, like your goofy hat or noise canceling headphones have just been the most beautiful invention in the world for me, because I find that I get very overstimulated with sound, and just having those in my ear and just being able to dampen down my environment just brings me this inner peace. Like, I don't go to the supermarket without them. I don't go to the game store without them now, just because I know that if I reach a point of overstimulation, that's what I need, to sort of bring myself center again. And I think that's great that you're so open. And I really hope anybody who's listening now or also takes that on board, that, this is a safe community to be open about what's going on with you and what you need to be comfortable. That's great. I think that's a really good part one for setting up your origin story. We can still go back and talk more about that, but let's have a little sting here and head into part two, transformations. So let's talk about moments where this game flipped for you, milestones along the way. And these could be positive or negative, but they could be, I know you've definitely gone to some of the events, like you went to Fuse Fest 2 recently, but are there any moments before that or more recently where the game sort of changed for you? Yeah,
so the big one that I can remember is when I first learned how to play the game, I didn't understand why stealth was a good thing. Obviously, as a card gamer in general, evasion is always good. You want something like that makes you unblockable. But on the surface, it seems like such conditional evasion. Oh, their creature has to be in the back row and mine has to be in the front row. And how often is this going to happen? That I remember just kind of pushing stealth aside, like, okay, I guess it's cool, but breakthrough, that one I like, that one I can understand.
Yeah.
And there definitely was a moment, I couldn't pinpoint it to the day, but there was a moment that stealth made sense to me. I was like, oh my goodness, if I have a stealth creature and I can remove their creature and they're off forge, now I'm guaranteed, there's ways to manipulate stealth into your advantage. And once I realized that opened up that whole new archetype for me of okay, this is something I can take advantage of.
Absolutely. And there's an awesome Aloyan card, Espionage or Soulbind, that gives your creature stealth and pushes the other creature back. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, but it's real fun. And it, like you said, it's kind of like that rediscovery of, if I can do that, then maybe stealth is, really powerful. Any other moments or like strategy moments? Like some people talk about how much damage they're willing to take chump blocking, or some people won't chump block at all, or some people always open lane. Any other strategy tips for people out there, or things that you've learned or have just recently picked up, or is stealth the main one?
So stealth was definitely the first aha moment. And I think probably my second aha moment was at the very beginning. I never quite knew what to do with the lanes. There were 5 of them to choose from. And particularly the first turn of a game, you're looking at the board and it's empty. And it's like, where do I play this creature? I don't know, lane 3, lane 1. I would just kind of pick one. So once I learned the strategy, and it was from losing too many times to Ice Storm, I learned the 1-3-5 strategy of, okay, let's not put creatures too close together because I don't want to deal with these, damage something and something next to it. So I started doing the pattern of 1-3-5, and unless I was playing an Ice Storm deck and wanted to try to bait my opponent.
That's the trick I've been learning as well.
Try to remember to play into 2 and 4 as well. But
I've been playing Ice Storm decks, and then why is everybody only playing 1-3-5? Oh, I'm playing 1-3-5, and they're responding with 1-3-5. And if I need them to group together, I need to go 1-2-3. Or it's so interesting that. Yeah, good observation. What do you love about the state of the game right now, or where we're at with SolForge? A few years in, at the time of this recording, Set 3's been out a little while, but we're still very early with its implementation in the digital app, and there's still lots of bugs.
Yes. I love the environment of the digital client. I love having access to the game at all hours of the day. Especially with the communities around the world, like yours with SolForge. I love that I have that option of getting up early and playing in a tournament that there's not going to be a tournament in my time zone firing at 5 a.m. So the fact that I can just jump on the internet and play with people around the world, it's really cool. And
we love having you in our, you're a regular in our SolForge events, and it's so cool. And you're regularly dominating our events as well. So yeah, it's really cool to have you a part of our community, and thanks for getting up early and joining us. I know it suits your schedule as well. What about events? Because I know you've been to some of the events, and I'm always, maybe as someone who's always from the outside looking in, keen to hear just a firsthand experience of what, say, FuseFest 2 was like for you, your experience there.
Yeah, so I have been to I've been to 2 different events now, because we had in the Minnesota area, they do every February like a very absolutely minuscule version of Gen Con that we call Con of the North. The other little board game YouTube content group that Jirch was a part of was hosting a whole bunch. They basically had their own room at Con of the North, hosting different board game events. And so since Jirch was involved with them, he ran a whole bunch of SolForge tournaments. We got to do a storyline event, a couple of different sealed events, constructed events, and that was sort of my first big SolForge tournament. So that was a lot of fun. My storyline deck is still one of my favorites in my collection. I got to discover the joy of Torgmai Guardian with Tortoise Colossus, because I had a Betrayer Tortoise Colossus in my deck.
Cool.
And I didn't even know it worked that way at first because, playing in paper cards, you don't have the app telling you, oh, this is a trigger. So my first couple of games, I didn't even play it correctly until I think it was Jurch walked by and saw it and said, that triggers again when he moves back, right? And I was like, oh, it does?
Yeah.
I wondered if it did. Like the first time I was like, I don't know, so I didn't do it. And then, I've been trying to find a good way to make that deck competitive ever since. And it's not there yet, but I'm not giving up on my two little best friend, Torgmai and Tortoise Colossus.
I love that you can have stories attached to certain decks. Like my first set 2 was a magnetic field deck. And I just love that card now. And, to the point where I spent a ridiculous amount of money with Scuba Toad's sale to buy a Betrayer magnetic field so I can have 2 magnetic fields. And it is funny how we kind of can get bound to a particular half deck because of like the conditions. I've even had people that have given me decks and that kind of crafts a memory in your brain. Oh yeah, this was the deck that someone gifted me. And that's so cool. Someone's cat had eaten their physical deck and they were giving away the digital versions of the decks that had been eaten. And I got a really cool dark heart deck that's sort of become my favorite now. So it's a cool community of people trading decks and sharing their love for the game. Is there anything that concerns you about the state of the game right now? Because we've talked about the positive and the positive experiences. Anything that sort of concerns you or you want to chat about briefly?
Yeah, so definitely the bugs in the app are huge. Even just in casual games in the queue that I played just before this podcast, someone had a Blight Witch in a sacrifice chamber and activated it, killed one of their creatures, and got a slay trigger. And it's just annoying to be on the other side of that, knowing that that's not how the rules are supposed to work, but that's the way they're happening in the client, and there's nothing I can do about it. There are several of my decks that have bugged abilities that don't work at all. And I obviously, I understand the massive undertaking of any digital game, and particularly one with as many card variations as SolForge Fusion, with the algorithmically generated decks. And I get it, and I do not envy those engineers with the task that they have in front of them, but it is frustrating to try to play tournaments and things like that, knowing that, oh, okay, well, I just can't play this deck, or I just can't play this card, and it's just dead in your hand, or you play it knowing that it's suboptimal and you just play it anyway. And
the thing that I'm trying not to evaluate cards and like form a permanent evaluation of the cards based on how they operate right now. Like I keep thinking Deep Forest Hills is quite a cool, I think that's its name, the Tempe's Exalt, that you click it and it does damage to the opposing creature and slides it back to defender. But what it doesn't do right now is slide them back to defender. So I keep trying to go, this could be good one day, even in a stealth build or something like that, to keep pushing the enemy back. It just doesn't work like that now. And I keep telling myself, don't form an opinion yet. Don't form an attachment to this card. Because I'd hate to write a card off just because of the way it works right now when it could work as written at some point in the future. Do you get a chance to play physically and then get, or does that not really, is it mostly app-based games for you and how you play this game?
Right now I play mostly digitally, just the way that my schedule is. I have a full-time morning job and then a part-time evening job. So I have afternoon availability and just like random times of the day free. So it's difficult to get like a physical gameplay going, which is kind of a shame because I do live in an area that has a pretty active in-person community.
Probably one of the biggest in the whole world, I think we could say at this point.
Yeah, we've got a really nice crew around here, but I do love that at least I have the option of the digital app because it just fits better with my schedule.
It's something we've been trying to work through as well. In this growing community we have in Australia, we all live probably about an hour at least away from each other, 30 minutes to an hour away. In some cases, 2 hours for someone like Paul. it's just so convenient to play games multiple nights a week or regularly with the online. We are still trying to get together once a month in person, just so we don't lose that connection, and play as sealed, where you get to open things physically and look at them and go, and try and remember how to do things like upgrades. It was always funny trying to watch us at our one time of the month where we're playing in real life. Oh, I forgot to upgrade this. Oh, all the things that the app does for you. But yeah, I think a lot of people are finding that the digital fills most of their sort of need for playing the game, but it is nice to have that option. I know you're a believer as well in having the physical cards, so that if anything does happen at some point in the future, that you can still play the game. You're not totally reliant on the digital, right?
Yeah, for sure. I would always rather buy physical than digital. Makes
sense. Let's move on to part 3, which is the relationship test, otherwise known as our lightning round. All right, you've listened to the show, so you know how this bit works. What is your favorite card in SolForge Fusion? Go!
I mean, my first ever favorite card was Dark Heart Sorcerer, so I think I got to stick with my buddy.
Nice. I love it too. Do you have a Betrayer, or you've only got Necrium ones?
I think right now I only have the Necrium ones. Definitely always on the lookout for a good Betrayer.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list too. There's one in Melbourne, but it's just someone who played once and then put it down. So I keep trying to track them down to try and get a hold of it. It's going to sit on the shelf somewhere forever. I just know it. What's your most hated card? Could be a card that you hate to see in your decks, or you hate to play against because it's so powerful or annoying or bugged.
Most hated card. That's actually a really hard one.
Because there's so many you hate, and you're having to choose from a huge list of hates.
yes. Too many to list. I think some of the new exalts are a little bit underwhelming. Not a big fan of the, what is it called? Cherished something. It just
Cherished
gives armor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really like that one so much.
Yep, I agree. Favorite modifier from any of the sets so far? So something you love seeing kind of on any creature. It's cool.
Devouring, for sure.
Yeah. You and I are very similar yet again, and my Devouring Summoner is my favorite one. And then I got a Devouring Demon or something the other day. I like the alliteration in that. So it's just great to be able to sling spells and then have an extra ability that's stat modification, right? Just so powerful. This is a new one that I've added in the last couple of weeks. What's your favorite Forgeborn and why?
Definitely Sunder is my girl. One of the archetypes that I've played the most across different games is kind of that spell slinger. Like I played Hearthstone like a handful of times in my life. Like I wasn't actually really a Hearthstone player, but those 5 to 10 times I played that game, I built myself a spell slinger deck, and it's one of my favorite archetypes in Magic, the blue-red spells decks. So again, with the reading Dark Heart Sorcerer for the first time and going, oh my goodness, this is blue-red spells in SolForge Fusion, let's go. And that was just, Sunder is my girl. She's the one who enables that strategy the best. Gathering Storm is so good.
So good. Yeah, I played a game with Carl this morning and we got to cycle 4 or something like that. And then I had cycle 4, Gathering Storm, had 2 spells in hand. He only had 14 health. That was it. Didn't matter. Such a good finish.
Yep.
Favorite artwork? Now, I recognize that some people don't even pay attention to the artwork at all, but you strike me as someone who does pay attention to the artwork, or might have a favorite piece that you like.
I think someone had mentioned him prior, but I like the art on Iranti Elementalist.
Yeah.
I just like the way he looks.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? And as a slinger, I think maybe there's this association in your brain when you see a card that gives you free spells. Of course, you're going to love whatever the art is attached with that because you love what the card does.
Or either that, or I've just seen him more often than most players because I have him in a lot of my decks. I don't know.
That's it. Now, this is a struggle for some people. I don't know the size of your collection. You don't have to name it publicly here on the show. But do you have a favorite half deck? Maybe it was that one from the storyline you were talking about earlier?
Yep. So that one is called the Tracker Fingers, and that one is definitely high up on my list. I do also think that I am in possession of the best Rumblespark deck that
Ooh,
exists.
big call.
That one is called Circular Crusty Sages, and that one was a gift from Church. So thank you, Brian. That one has got to be my favorite. It's just really, really good.
All right. Well, I'll make sure to get those deck links off you so we can put those in the show notes because I'm sure people would love to have a look. Last but not least, favorite betrayer from your collection, something that didn't belong in a deck that you just absolutely love.
Yep. So this one has a silly story with it. I don't remember if it was for an SolForge sealed or if I was just opening boosters for fun, but I realized I had been opening them sitting in bed and had them kind of stacked up on my nightstand, and I realized that I had the same betrayer in two different decks. Yep. That he didn't belong in. So I decided to make a fuse out of it for fun. So it's Stampeding Mongosaur, and I have him in green and I have him in purple.
It was a prize deck. It was a prize deck you got, and you were so excited, and I love that about this game.
Oh, yes. Yep. So I have fused it into a deck. I've played it, and I always play it with the stipulation that if I draw the Mongosaur, I have to play him.
That's nice. Awesome. Well, let's move on to the last segment, which is called Your Future Together. All right, typical relationship question. Where do you see this relationship going in 2 to 5 years, especially since you play so many different games? There's always the risk that we could lose you to one of the other games that are going on at the moment. So where do you think you're going to be in 2 to 5 years with this game?
Hopefully still playing. Hopefully playing competitively. I would love to see the tournament circuit kind of ramp up, get organized play going in stores again. I work at a store now. I have owned my own store previously and done a lot of tournament organizing. So that's just kind of a passion of mine, is getting people together in a room to sling cards at each other. So hopefully would love to see that in the next few years. I can't make it to Gen Con this year because I have to be financially responsible, unfortunately, but would love to make it out there next year and actually compete in Worlds. I think I'm okay at this game and would love to really put myself to that challenge of let's just play against the best people in the world and see how I do.
I'd love to do that someday as well, like try and line it up with one of my trips back to the States to see family. So maybe one day we'll get to play together at a Gen Con in person. That would be so cool. Any shout outs or people that you would like to plug, or events that you have going on? Or it doesn't have to be SolForge stuff, could be Flesh and Blood stuff or other stuff you have going on, but anybody you'd like to say hi to or things you'd like to plug?
I mean, definitely gotta shout out Brian and Zoe for getting me into this game in the first place. Huge shout out to you and SolForge for having 2 events every week that I can just jump into in my schedule. As far as non-SolForge related things, anyone who is in the Twin Cities area and likes baked goods, I am a professional cake decorator. You can find me on Instagram at Critical Hit Cakes or criticalhitcakery.com. And as the kids say, my commissions are open.
Well, I'm going to follow you as well so I can check out these cakes because I've heard you talking about them for a while now. This is the part of the show where we have the secret word. So have you had any thoughts about what you want the secret word to be? Yes, you have. Wonderful.
Yeah. So I am a longtime listener of the pod, so I have been thinking about this ever since we decided that we would have a chat. So I'm hoping that you'll all humor me on this. So it is from my favorite musical, and bonus points for anyone who knows what that musical is. Bonus points have no cash value and can be redeemed for nothing but, a hit of dopamine in your brain. But the word is kumquat. And the line from the show is, "You're standing in my kumquat." So if anyone recognizes that musical, you're my new favorite person.
That is awesome. I should explain for anyone who's a first-time listener to the show that all you need to do is DM me kumquat to my inbox, and on Discord I'm Iron Bryce, And anybody who does that, I put them in the draw to win a SolForge Fusion digital deck each month. So I'm looking forward to many kumquats arriving, and I might have to do some research to try and figure out what that's from myself. I don't know the reference. If you liked this podcast, there are other really cool podcasts out there. Brian Jurch does Charge Plated podcasts. That's really excellent if you're first starting to get to know the game, and he keeps up with that regularly as well. And Fifth Cycle is also a great podcast. So check those out if you want some more content while I'm busy creating other episodes for you to listen to. And OzForge is the other organization I'll plug, which is my organization along with some friends. We have events twice a week, and you can find those in the events tab in the official Stoneblade Discord and on solforgefusion.com under events. So thank you so much, Carly, for coming on the show. I really enjoyed our chat. I think it's given me a new perspective on you and your love for the game, and yet again has revealed how many ways you and I kind of are similar in the way we view the game, which is awesome. So I'll see you on the battlefield for our next OzForge event. And thank you again for coming.
Great. Yeah, thank you for having me.